Uh, Good evening. My name is Raja. I am Indian diplomat. I am very happy to be here with you. Firstly, do all of you hear me? Can you hear me? And can you understand me? Because I can't speak, as well as professor in Korean language, but we should understand each other. Not only I understanding me, you understanding me. I also want to hear from you. Today, the university has asked me to speak about generally India, Indian economy, Indian culture, Indian tourism, relations with Korea. I'm very happy that this beautiful university, Hanyang. I went to the website. Only 7-year-old, but already great reputation in terms of brand building and also global reach, quality education. I would like to congratulate all of you. And today is very cold day. No mucho huh? And very happy that all of you, despite the cold weather, and Friday evening there are many things to do, interesting things. But you have all come to meet me, to listen to me. I take as reflection of friendship, your interest in India. I am very happy about it. Today, I don't have any textbook. I am not a professor, but I will give you a little idea about India and try to generate some interest. I would encourage you all to ask me questions now. Later you do more research to find about India. I will start with a quotation from an Indian poet, Tagore. Maybe some of you know. He won the first Nobel Literature Prize from Asia, Asian part, Rabindranath Tagore. Because for you, India, you want to know what is India, how distant, what Indians think about Korea. Similarly, of course, the other side also there is interest. Here is what the poet laureate Tagore wrote in 1929, good 80 years ago. We did not know in 1929 what the Republic of Korea would be, that we would be preparing to host the G20 summit. No knowledge. I am quoting, in the golden age of Asia, Korea was one of its lamp bearers, like Statue of Liberty. And the lamp is waiting to be lit once again for the illumination of the East. And this is what not a diplomat trying to flatter his hosts, but this is bursting out of a poet, people's poet, about the common perception in India about Korea. 1929, both India and Korea were colonies. You of Japan, we of England. We were enduring the hardship. So that time, this was a call for justice, that we will rise and, find our appropriate place in the Committee of Nations. Now, let's compare, to relate with India. India is a large country. How large? 3 million square kilometers of area, roughly 30 times as large as Korea, Republic of Korea, and population 1.1 billion, which is 22 times of Korean population. And today there is growing interest in India because India is large, billion people, large middle class, 300, 400 million people who want cars, refrigerators, video recorders and televisions, and for example, cell phones, hand phone. Korea is world leader. Every month, 6 million hand phones are bought in India. Every month. So, India is generating global attention because of the robust growth, dynamism of the economy. So, let's take a look at Indian economy. Today, Indian economy is the 13th or 12th largest. I think 13th is Korea, just one above Korea, with $1.2 trillion. And this is GDP, the gross domestic product. But World Bank has recently come up with another way of measuring the wealth of nations. There is a question whether GDP truly reflects the wealth of a nation. So the another indicator is purchasing power parity. For example, a dollar may not get you the same value in Korea, India, Japan or France, different countries. We had a sumptuous dinner. In India, if you pay $1, you can have a nice dinner and also tip the waiter. So because in India the purchasing power gets you more. So based on that, the World Bank has put the Indian economic quantum at $5.2 trillion. In terms of per capita, it translates to $4,500 per capita. And in terms of global rank, US, Japan and India ranks, I think, third largest in terms of purchasing power parity. Let it be. And what is the projection? You all know that Mr. Lee Myung-bak, he has won the presidential elections handsomely. He proclaimed that he will get 747. You know that. That 747 is based on Goldman Sachs projection. So the same Goldman Sachs, what do they say about India? They say that India in the year 2050 will be not only in purchasing power parity, but in absolute terms, India will be the third largest economy in the world. Because if you see back in history, 18th century, at the time of Industrial Revolution, China and India together used to contribute over 40% of the world production. Industrial Revolution distorted that because of colonization. In a long, if you take a long view, this 200 years is a small period. It's a blip. Now, after 200 years, we come to 2050, and the projection is that again the world would look as it was in 1850, which is China and India together producing about 40% of the global production. So, in terms of that 2050 projection, India would be the third largest. What is important is hope. Barack Obama became president promising hope, change that we can believe in. So, you see that in the 60s, 70s and 80s, large number of people went to US because they hoped to find their fortune as US as the land of opportunity. Today, in India, you find a lot of that hope and optimism and dynamism. I served in Tokyo. Tokyo was the second largest economy, $40,000 of per capita GDP. But I was there 1999 to 2002. There was no hope. In fact, there was the other side, despair, gloom, because Japanese see their population is aging, birth rate is contracting, universities have difficulty in finding enrollments, and their global share is shrinking fast. So the human psychology is that where there is hope, hope further propels growth and dynamism. So today India is that story of growth and dynamism. And we, despite the present economic crisis, because of the crisis, I think the Russian economy shrank 7%, and Korea is looking at 1% growth. Last quarter, July to September, India registered 7.9% growth. It's very robust. And we have comfortable foreign exchange reserves of $300 billion, so there are no shocks. And what is important, like Koreans and Chinese and Japanese, India also has oriental values of saving. We save 38%. The problem with US is that they don't save. They spend, borrow and spend. Whereas India, we save 38% of the GDP. 38%. Excuse me. And 39% of GDP goes into investment. Excuse me. So when you have that kind of consumption, investment, the economy keeps growing. In terms of the sectoral breakup, India has agriculture, large area, 20%, industry 20%, services. This is what is interesting. In Korea, you have very strong manufacturing base, but services not very competitive globally. But India, not very strong in industry, but services very competitive, because we have a large number of human resource base. So today Indian economy draws almost 60% of the GDP from services. And one more thing, today there is a debate how to sustain high growth rate in the world, because countries like China, they run huge trade surplus. Countries like US, they run huge trade deficit. So every country is interested in how to promote domestic demand. Indian growth, 80% of it is domestic based. Say Korea depends 93% on trade. 93% of your GDP is a trade. But in case of India, it's only 20%. So because India is a large continental proportions country, so that domestic, so this also gives you that cushion from external shocks. The Lehman Brothers collapsed and many banks failed, but Indian banks and Indian economy was stable, because firstly it is when you are going in a sea, in ocean, the larger the ship, the smaller the shock. Secondly, that kind of foreign exchange reserves and domestic dependence has saved the Indian economy. Then how is the Indian economy progressing? It is progressively reducing the taxes, import duties, custom duties. Come in 10 days, we are getting into 2010, and we will reduce duties below 10% and on a par with the ASEAN, Southeast Asian countries. Last year was abnormal year, that there was economic crisis and growth in fact went into negative figures. Despite that, India attracted $30 billion of investment, which is a reflection of the confidence that global investors have. And what is driving Indian growth? One thing is Indian population is large. Second thing is, in 25 years and below, young population, say 50% of our national population is below 25 years. So in another 10 years, they're all potential customers, consumers for Samsung, LG, Hyundai. It is not that, aging society, that there is nothing that, they can spend. So this is also workforce is raring to go into production, into work and be productive. So the dependent population is very small, working population is large, which is different from even China. China, because of their one-child policy, so they are aging and their dependency is growing. Whereas in case of India, we were wondering actually whether we did the right thing, because we did not force people to have one child because of democracy, personal freedoms. But today, demographers say that India has an advantage because you have a larger workforce and your dependency ratio is smaller. Is it good enough if we have only people, bodies? You also need to educate them. Educate them in the right areas, like cyber university. You have the faculties which are in demand in the market. Every year, India produces 700,000 engineering graduates, which is larger than, say, China, 530,000, Japan, 350,000, US, 420,000, Europe, 470,000. So it's like almost 1 million engineers, like an army, every year stepping out. They are working not only in Indian companies but also in LG, Samsung, Hyundai for research and development, for not only products in India, for even global products all over the world. So this is broadly the economy. Today we have a Prime Minister who is a renowned economist, and he started the reform process of Indian economy, and the outlook looks very promising. Then we move on into a section, information technology, because people may ask, what is driving Indian economy? Actually, this is a very fascinating question. So much so that Mr. Lee Myung-bak, when he was contemplating to become president, to run for the presidency, he visited India to see firsthand what is driving India. Because Korea at that time was growing at 4% per annum. And he wanted to accelerate it, push to 7%. But India already is growing at 7+%. He wanted to see what is driving Indian growth. What is driving Indian growth? Any guess? Good. So this IT, what is IT? IT Moyo. You're right.
Engineering and math and science.
Yes, you have gone into the philosophical foundation. Information technology. information technology, Indians have done so well that somebody generously said Indian technology. Why is it Indian technology? Because you take, go to Silicon Valley, take any IT company, or go to India, take any family, like my family. My brother is an IT senior architect. So without an Indian IT professional, so no IT company is considered complete. So people would ask, how come India has gone into IT? I don't say that, we have made more progress than Korea. We admire Korea. What you have done in electronics, hardware, or semiconductors is salute. But in terms of software, is firstly the mathematics foundation, that Indians were always fascinated by mathematics. In fact, somebody was saying over dinner that zero, the value zero, was first the concept was conceived by Indians. Earlier, imagine without zero, you would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. After that, you say large number. Or you say 2 nines, 3 nines, 9 nines, and you stop. You cannot go beyond that. With the introduction of zero, now the computer, how it works, binary, zeros and ones. You give any complex program, it only records as zeros and ones. So that mathematical tradition, and at school, we as children, we don't use much calculator, we memorize the tables. For example, 18 12s. So we can do readily here, so instantly. So that mathematical foundation. Secondly, English language. Say it was a historical coincidence that England colonized India and we learnt English. And that English has stood us in good stead. In fact, in India also we had movements to impose Hindi and drive out English, like in Japan. This morning I was listening to some Korean novelist settled in Tokyo, American citizen. She is saying that, Japanese, unlike Koreans, they do not embrace English. They are still shy, So India has taken to English. We study in English medium. So English language, because most of the information technology development, programming is done in English. The third thing is, India is a very complex, diverse society. We speak different languages, we follow different customs, different religions, different costumes, different food. So it's a very complex thing. So if you have a problem, so you need out of the box solutions for your own daily small routine matters. So this is what precisely you require in information technology. When you're writing programs, you need to find solutions. How do you find solutions is that if you're used to lateral thinking, not thinking, as you're conditioned, but to think out of the box, innovatively. So that is something that every Indian has to do for his basic existence in India. Then the time difference, because US was the main market for IT in India. So exactly they offered the time difference of day and night. When they complete the transactions at the end of the day in US, they close and pass on. Then through the day in India, they work. And by the time US starts the day again, the solutions are ready. And fortunately, there was this Y2K, the year 2000. So there was a great scare and panic and anxiety that all computers will stop working at the stroke of 1st January 2000. Because till that time, programs were written for 1999 only. So we have to change that into 2000. So that was a great opportunity that India has encashed. And that was one opportunity. Another challenge was, how did India first start working on computers? We were also, like most of the world, dependent on IBM, American, international business machines company. So they were supplying computers and running the country. But in 1974, the American government told IBM, leave India. Okay, so IBM left India. Then we have to run our airlines, our railways, our computers. Then we have a group of companies, a Chabol like Samsung, called Tata. So they started a company called CMC, Computer Maintenance Corporation. So they stepped in and they started computing. So that was way back almost 35 years, 1974. So today, thanks to that IBM's withdrawal, we learned computers, and also we got this IT opportunity. And what has IT done to India? This is really transformational, really changed the life in India. Before IT has become a major growth stimulus, India was growing at 3-4% maximum. IT has given that boost. To break out of that, we used to call it Hindu growth of rate. Hindu. Because Hindus, were known to be complacent, not very adventurous. So Hindu growth is you grow 2%, 3% happy. But thanks to IT, that now has moved into 7%, 8%. Then, in terms of employment generation, IT has generated 2 million jobs directly, 8 million jobs in indirect. For example, if 2 million people are working, you need to supply them, housing and catering, food, real estate, and various other support services. So total 10 million people. What is important is women have taken to IT jobs. So this has promoted social equity. See, also, we are traditional society, there is this tendency for stereotyping that man is superior. That IT has greatly contributed, because if you see, almost 45% of the jobs are done in IT by women. And today, almost 6% of the GDP and 29% of the exports come from IT. This has become a major. Say, we also have the same problem like America in terms of trade deficit. But for IT, we have two things saving Indian economy. One is IT. We have huge surplus there. Secondly, Indians working abroad. We have, some 6-7 million Indians working in the Middle East, in Europe, in US and elsewhere. They send, I think globally the largest expatriate remittances backflow come to India. Koreans may be making more money, but Indians are more family loving and caring. So they may not eat their dinner properly, but they send back money for the family, brothers and sisters. So these two things have greatly helped the Indian economy. So that is about the IT. I'll just touch upon, because I can't tell everything, in 1 hour thing. In terms of culture, I touched upon the diversity of India. India goes back to 5,000 years of civilization. So civilization is, in terms of, if you see the evolution of the progress of mankind, you would first be living in caves or forests. You will be hunting or stone gathering, then agriculture, then produce something, then city. But India has produced urban civilization, cities, 5,000 years ago. And the population moved all across the country and also to other parts of Asia, and also produced great diversity in terms of food, the clothing and cultural practices and arts, architecture, music, literature, what you have. And I will now come to the contact between India and Korea. It's very interesting. When do you think the first contact was between India and Korea? It's okay, you can guess. No negative points.
I guess World War II,
2 years?
No. I mean World War II.
World War II, right. Good. 2000 years. Okay. Say, the legend is that, you know Kaya Kingdom? So Kaya Kingdom was started by Himsuro I and his wife came from India. Princess from Ayodhya. In fact, when this, we met, Mr. Lee Myung-bak when he was about to become president, in a few hours. So when this story was told, he said, Shinjayo, really? You think Indian lady is coming for Korean? Really? Or was she was going somewhere else? So you can visit Kimhae today and you can see there are memorials. And also my earlier ambassador wrote a novel as to how this was without internet, without cell phone, how this lady came to know about the prince in Korea. It's a very fascinating story. And this was very well documented in your own Samguk Yusa. Samguk Yusa says that this princess from Ayodhya came. And after the World War II, in the modern era, that may or may not believe, I know. But during the, after the war, when Korea became independent of colonial rule, elections were to be held. First elections. Who was the chairman of the International Election Commission, UN Commission for Elections? India. India came in 1947 and assisted in holding the first elections. And 1950 to 53, there was Inter-Korea War, and India had sent its medical ambulance units to serve, to assist the wounded, injured. And also India sponsored this ceasefire resolution, which even today it holds. And after the war, you have to send home the prisoners of war. And India was the chairman of that settlement of the prisoners of war issue. And we have quickly established relations, and there may be some feeling, perception that India belongs to the communist Russian Soviet camp. Today, India-Russia trade is $7 billion. And last year, India-Korea trade was $16 billion. And LG, Samsung, Hyundai, they are very popular household names in India. You go and touch any Indian, he may be driving a Hyundai car, which is the second largest motor company in India, or using LG air conditioner or a Samsung television. And Samsung sponsors the Indian Olympic team. This is a very popular household name. And next month, President Lee Myung-bak will be visiting India. We have every January Republic Day, the day when India became a republic. You have a republic to the north of you, Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Not like that. We are a republic. Because the head of the state is not son of somebody, but he is elected president. And our Republic Day, we take one chief guest, and next year the honor goes to Korea. President Lee Myung-bak will be the chief guest of our Republic Day celebrations. And the background we have prepared very well, that India and Korea have signed FTA, Free Trade Agreement, so that you have access to large and growing market in India for Samsung, LG, Hyundai and very many small medium enterprises. Also Indian professionals, this is first time unique. No other FTA provides for movement of professionals, but this particular FTA we have worked out in such a way, because you cannot have an agreement which is unfair. So it has to be mutually beneficial. So for the benefit of India, 163 professions, Indians in 163 professions can come execute projects in computer programming, testing, architecture, law, you name it, different fields. And that will come into force from January, 2 weeks from now. And India and Korea have very many complementarities. You take your own, IT. Korea is very strong in hardware, electronics, semiconductors, whereas India has done some work in software. So we can do together, which is what is happening. Samsung and LG both have their largest overseas R&D centers in India, because they draw on Indian brain power and further improve their product designing. Also the large Indian manpower base. I told you we have 700,000 engineers every year graduating. In Seoul you have a very fine institution in science and technology called KIST, the Korea Institute of Science and Technology. Do you know which country has the largest number of scientists there? Of course, apart from Korea, India. They are so happy, they are going to establish a liaison office in India to draw more scientists. So the SEPA will provide for this kind of opportunity. And we are also cooperating in Global Fora, World Trade Organization, to finalize the World Trade Agreement, and climate change negotiations, and joining together, East Asia Summit, or South Asia we have SAARC. And I will conclude with a quote, another quotation on tourism, because I understand that you have very many students majoring in hospitality and tourism. German scholar Max Müller was asked, which is the country which offers all the tourist diversity. This is a quotation. If I were asked under what sky the human mind has most fully developed, some of its choicest gifts, has most deeply pondered on the greatest problems of life, and has found solutions, I should point to India. Here is another from French, Romain Rolland. If there is one place on the face of the earth where all the dreams of living men have found a home from the very earliest days when man began the dream of existence, it is India. I leave this with you. We're all heading towards Christmas in a few days. People ask, do you have Christmas? Do you celebrate Christmas in India? Today, the most powerful political figure in India is a Roman Catholic, Sonia Gandhi. And we have more Christians in India than you have in Korea. And Christianity reached India in 52 AD and was welcomed, received well. Ahead of it went to England. And Merry Christmas to all of you. And now I'll be very happy. I don't want to be in the only speaking mode, but I'll be very happy to see what interests you, to answer your questions. interact with you, also learn in the process from you. And one commonality, I also, like you, went to evening school and studied law in evening college. So I fully understand your experience. I appreciate once again that you came despite the cold and very many preoccupations. And thank you very much. Kamsahamnida.